Is Japanese difficult to learn? Well, according to the US Foreign Services Institute, it is the hardest language for a native English speaker to learn. What do they know? You can learn it, and here's why. Alright, so I'll give the Foreign Services Institute some credit. Japanese is, to an extent, difficult. But I think that's because the reasoning they use is because it takes a lot of time to learn. And yeah, in that respect, they're absolutely right. Japanese does take time. But so does anything worth doing. You just need to be committed. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through the top 4 most difficult parts about Japanese, in my opinion. And if you can make it through that without bursting into tears and wanting to give up, then congratulations, you've gotten past a mental hurdle that a lot of people won't even get to come across. Sound cool? Cool. Let's get started. Let's start with number 1, the writing systems. Yeah, there's more than one. So one of the things I think that puts people, English speakers, off learning Japanese is just how difficult the language characters are. Take hiragana and katakana for example. Not only are you learning about 40 different symbols each time, they don't really, well not most of them, have a one-to-one match-up with English letters. And then we move on to kanji. Now you take the alphabet, where in English, where a letter can be somewhere like 1 to 4 strokes, and then you compare it to kanji, some of which can look like this. You can see why people can be disheartened. And that's not to mention the stroke order. The order in which you write the strokes in this kanji actually matter. And these things have multiple pronunciations that can depend on things like where it is in a word. There are a lot of things that make the writing systems scary. Manageable, I think they are manageable, but they do take a bit of mental gymnastics to get used to. If you're learning Japanese and you want to get to a reasonable level, you're going to want to know about 2,000 of these kanji minimum. So there's that to keep in mind. But that's not all Japanese has to throw at you. We've also got number 2 on the list, grammar. Now, the grammar in Japanese is wildly different to anything you've experienced in English. Not only have you got to worry about different ways sentences are ordered, you've got things like no spaces between words, you've got different ways of conjugating verbs, you've got pronouns are used less often and in different sort of ways. It's not the easiest thing to get a grasp of, and it really is a grind at the start, and you've got to take things slowly if you want to get it. It's not just a simple change 1 for 1 each word and have a brand new sentence, and that's one of the reasons why things like Google Translate don't always work well at the start. There's a lot there that can really knock you off course. So it's important to stay focused and stay committed if you want to persist with the language. Number 3, you kind of need to do everything. And by everything I mean the big 4. Reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Some people, when they want to learn Japanese, their goal is just to view anime without subtitles. And for that they go, look, I just need to be able to hear it and understand it, that's all. It doesn't quite work like that. A lot of the way the Japanese spoken language is structured really only makes sense if you understand the written language. Now, I'm sure you can do it. I mean, babies in Japan do it. They learn the spoken language first, and then they learn to read and write when they're a little bit older. But when you're studying as an adult, it's kind of like a shortcut that you need to take, learning written Japanese, because you don't have the opportunity, well, most people don't, to surround themselves with people speaking to them exclusively in Japanese. Unless you are living alone in Japan. There's probably a way you can do it. If you know a way, let me know. I'm very curious about it. But in my experience, the best way just to get started is to learn your hiragana, learn your katakana, learn some vocabulary, get going with a good textbook, and you've got to focus on all 4 aspects. Find a way to speak, use iTalki, use a tutor, find a way to read, get native resources. Lots of things you can do. You've got to get, I wouldn't necessarily recommend manga to start with, lots of things you can do, and you have to cover all 4 aspects of the language as soon as possible, as much as you can. Number 4, Kegel. Now this can be a pretty scary thing. I remember when I first encountered it, I'd been studying Japanese for a little while, and I thought I had a pretty good grasp of the fundamentals and the basics, and I thought it was going along well, and then I get thrown this curveball of Kegel, which if you haven't heard about it, it is this honorific and respectful sort of speech. It is pretty different. There are different verbs to say things you thought you could already say. You might not encounter it as often as your regular Japanese speech, but it is still something that down the line you will have to learn and be able to understand. In all honesty, it's not that bad. It's just something you really have to endure and work through to get the hang of. And I'm still getting the hang of it. So that's my list. Did you make it through without crying? If you did, congratulations. If you skipped to this point, I take back that congratulations. That's not for you. But if you did make it through, you are one step closer to learning Japanese. Now, Japanese, while it is tough at times and it is time consuming, it doesn't have to be a long, boring road. It's going to be long. It doesn't have to be a boring journey. There are lots of ways you can supplement something like a textbook or classes to help you really get engaged with the language and stay engaged with the language. And that's why I recommend using alternative resources to just boost your Japanese. I actually made a video about this recently, talking about different ways that I have supplemented my studies with things like books and YouTube videos and online resources, just to get myself in the zone and be able to motivate myself to keep studying Japanese, even when it got a bit repetitive at times. If you're interested in checking that out, there's a link on this video and a link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something of value in this video. If you did and you like this sort of thing, maybe have a think about subscribing. I've got more Japanese learning videos coming to this channel very soon. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.